In Ecce Homo, Nietzsche writes, "In my life work, my Zarathustra holds a place apart. With it, I have given mankind the greatest gift that has ever been bestowed upon it." This book, with a voice speaking across the ages, is not only the loftiest book on earth, the book that is truly characterized by mountain air. The whole phenomena of mankind lies beneath it at an incalculable distance. It is also the deepest, born out of the inmost abundance of truth, an inexhaustible well to which no pitcher descends without coming up again laden with gold and goodness. It's also noteworthy that Beyond Good and Evil, another masterpiece written by Nietzsche, serves only as an elaboration and clarification of the ideas first presented in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which underscores the latter's foundational role in Nietzsche's philosophy. Given Nietzsche's own assessment, the philosophical depth of the work, its literary merits, and its influence on his subsequent writings, there is a strong case to be made that Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and by extension Zarathustra's Prologue, which serves as a microcosm of the key themes that Nietzsche explores throughout the book, is indeed the best piece written by Nietzsche. While opinions may vary, Nietzsche's own words lend substantial credence to this perspective. The philosophical novel Thus Spoke Zarathustra was published in 4 parts between 1883 and 1885. To better understand the incredible genius of Nietzsche, please note that he wrote each part in no more than 10 days, according to his own confession in Ecce Homo. Zarathustra's Prologue is its opening section. In this prologue, Nietzsche introduces the character of Zarathustra, based on the ancient Persian prophet Zoroaster, and sets the stage for Nietzsche's philosophical ideas that will be explored throughout the book, and for Zarathustra's journey, and his attempts to share his wisdom with the people, who are initially confused and resistant to his ideas. The prologue contains some of Nietzsche's most famous and frequently quoted lines, such as, "I teach you the Übermensch. Man is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him?" Nietzsche uses Zarathustra as a mouthpiece to present his most important concepts, including the death of God and the critique of traditional morality, the eternal recurrence, and the will to power. The death of God, as presented by Nietzsche, represents the decline of traditional Christian morality and the loss of faith in absolute moral values in the wake of the Enlightenment. Nietzsche saw this as a profound crisis that threatened to lead to nihilism, where life appears meaningless. In response, Nietzsche introduces the Übermensch as a potential solution, a new type of human who has overcome traditional morality and learned to create their own values and meaning in life. By embracing eternal recurrence and affirming life fully, the Übermensch moves beyond nihilism to find a new sense of purpose. The Übermensch represents Nietzsche's ideal of a person who creates their own path to a meaningful existence in a world without God. Thus Spoke Zarathustra is not only a philosophical work but also a literary masterpiece. Nietzsche employs a unique, almost biblical writing style, full of allegories, parables, and metaphors, which makes the book engaging and thought-provoking. Nietzsche's ideas have had a profound impact on Western philosophy, literature, and culture. Many subsequent thinkers, such as Carl Jung, Martin Heidegger, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, and Michel Foucault, have been influenced by Nietzsche's work. The book also inspired Richard Strauss's tone poem Also sprach Zarathustra, which famously featured in the opening scene of Stanley Kubrick's film 2001, A Space Odyssey, further cementing the work's cultural significance. Thus Spoke Zarathustra is an encouragement of self-overcoming. Zarathustra's journey and his philosophy encourage us to grow, attain self-mastery, and realize our full potential. If it's the first time you're watching an Irevelato video, welcome. Here we explore the profound ideas of history's greatest luminaries. Subscribe if you want to join us. If you are already part of Irevelato, thank you for joining us once again, dear friend. Remember that every like, share, and comment helps us spread these thought-provoking concepts far and wide. But if you wish to contribute further, you will find details about our Patreon and affiliate links in the description. However, no matter what, you are always welcome here to ponder life's big questions with us. Thank you for watching. Now, without further ado, here is Friedrich Nietzsche's prologue to Thus Spoke Zarathustra. When Zarathustra was 30 years old, he left his home and the lake of his home and went into the mountains. There he enjoyed his spirit and solitude, and for 10 years did not tire of it. But at last his heart changed, and rising one morning with the rosy dawn, he went before the sun and spoke to it. "You great star, what would your happiness be if you did not have those for whom you shine? For 10 years you have climbed to my cave. You would have wearied of your light and of the journey had it not been for me, my eagle and my serpent. But we waited for you every morning, took from you your overflow, and blessed you for it. Look, I am weary of my wisdom, like the bee that has gathered too much honey. I need hands outstretched to take it. I would give away and distribute until the wise have once more become joyous in their folly, and the poor happy in their riches. Therefore, I must descend into the depths, as you do in the evening when you go behind the sea and give light to the nether world too, you exuberant star. Like you, I must go down, as men say, to whom I shall descend. Bless me then, you tranquil eye, that can look even upon an all too great happiness without envy. Bless the cup that wants to overflow, that the water may flow golden from it, and carry everywhere the reflection of your bliss. Look, this cup wants to become empty again, and Zarathustra wants to become man again." Thus began Zarathustra's downgoing. Zarathustra went down the mountain alone, no one meeting him. When he entered the forest, however, there suddenly stood before him an old man who had left his holy hut to seek roots. And thus spoke the old man to Zarathustra. "This wanderer is no stranger to me. Many years ago he passed by here. Zarathustra he was called, but he has changed. Back then you carried your ashes into the mountains. Will you now carry your fire into the valleys? Do you not fear the incendiary's doom?" Yes, I recognize Zarathustra. Pure is his eye, and his mouth contains no disgust. Does he not stride along like a dancer? Zarathustra is changed. Zarathustra has become a child. Zarathustra is an awakened one. What will you do in the land of the sleepers? As you have lived in solitude in the sea, and it has borne you up. Alas, will you now go ashore? Alas, will you again drag your body yourself? Zarathustra answered, "I love mankind." "Why?" said the saint. "Did I go into the forest and the desert? Was it not because I loved men far too much? Now I love God. Men I do not love. Man is too imperfect a thing for me. Love for man would be fatal to me." Zarathustra answered, "What did I say about love? I am bringing gifts to men." "Give them nothing," said the saint. "Rather take part of their load and carry it along with them. That will be most agreeable to them, if only it is agreeable to you. If, however, you will give to them, give them no more than alms, and let them also beg for it." "No," replied Zarathustra, "I give no alms. I am not poor enough for that." The saint laughed at Zarathustra and spoke thus, "Then see to it that they accept your treasures. They are distrustful of anchorites, and do not believe that we come with gifts. The fall of our footsteps rings too hollow through their streets. And just as at night, when they are in bed and hear a man abroad long before sunrise, they ask themselves concerning us, 'Where goes the thief?' Do not go to men, but stay in the forest. Go rather to the animals. Why not be like me, a bear among bears, a bird among birds?" "And what does the saint do in the forest?" asked Zarathustra. The saint answered, "I make hymns and sing them, and in making hymns I laugh and weep and mumble. Thus do I praise God. With singing, weeping, laughing, and mumbling I praise the God who is my God. But what do you bring us as a gift?" When Zarathustra had heard these words, he bowed to the saint and said, "What would I have to give you? Let me rather hurry away, lest I take anything from you." And thus they parted from one another, the old man and Zarathustra, laughing like schoolboys. When Zarathustra was alone, however, he said to his heart, "Could it be possible? This old saint in the forest has not yet heard of it, that God is dead?" When Zarathustra arrived at the nearest town adjacent to the forest, he found many people assembled in the marketplace. For it had been announced that a rope dancer would give a performance, and Zarathustra spoke to the people. I teach you the Übermensch. Man is something that must be surpassed. What have you done to surpass man? All beings up to now have created something beyond themselves, and you want to be the ebb of that great tide and rather go back to the beast than surpass man? What is the ape to man? A laughingstock, a thing of shame. And just the same shall man be to the Übermensch, a laughingstock, a thing of shame. You have made your way from worm to man, and much within you is still worm. Once you were apes, and even now man is more of an ape than any ape. Even the wisest among you is only a disharmony and hybrid of plant and phantom. But do I bid you become phantoms or plants? Look, I teach you the Übermensch. The Übermensch is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say, the Übermensch shall be the meaning of the earth. I conjure you, my brothers, remain true to the earth, and do not believe those who speak to you of super-earthly hopes. They are poisoners, whether they know it or not. They are despisers of life, decaying ones and poisoned ones themselves, of whom the earth is weary, so away with them. Once blasphemy against God was the greatest blasphemy, but God died, and with him those blasphemers. To blaspheme the earth is now the most dreadful sin, and to value the heart of the unknowable more than the meaning of the earth. Once the soul looked contemptuously on the body, and that contempt was supreme. The soul wished the body to be meagre, ghastly, and famished. Thus it thought to escape from the body and the earth. Oh, that soul was itself meagre, ghastly and famished, and cruelty was the delight of that soul. But you, my brothers, tell me, what does your body say about your soul? Is your soul not poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency? Truly, man is a polluted stream. One must be a sea to receive a polluted stream without becoming impure. Look, I teach you the Übermensch. He is that sea. In him, your great contempt can be submerged. What is the greatest thing you can experience? It is the hour of great contempt, the hour in which even your happiness becomes loathsome to you as well as your reason and virtue. The hour when you say, "What good is my happiness? It is poverty, pollution, and wretched self-complacency, but my happiness should justify existence itself." The hour when you say, "What good is my reason? Does it long for knowledge as the lion for his food? It is poverty, pollution, and wretched self-complacency." The hour when you say, "What good is my virtue? It has not yet made me passionate. How weary I am of my good and my bad. It is all poverty, pollution, and wretched self-complacency." The hour when you say, "What good is my justice? I do not see that I am fervour and fuel. The just, however, are fervour and fuel." The hour when we say, "What good is my pity? Is pity not the cross on which he who loves man is nailed? But my pity is not a crucifixion." Have you ever spoken thus? Have you ever cried out like this? Ah, I wish I had heard you crying like this. It is not your sin. It is your self-satisfaction that cries out to heaven. Your very sparingness in sin cries out to heaven. Where is the lightning to lick you with its tongue? Where is the frenzy with which you should be inoculated? Look, I teach you the Übermensch. He is that lightning. He is that frenzy. When Zarathustra had spoken thus, one of the people called out, "We have now heard enough of the rope dancer. It is time for us to see him." And all the people laughed at Zarathustra. But the rope dancer, who thought the words applied to him, began his performance. Zarathustra, however, looked at the people and wondered. Then he spoke. "Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Übermensch, a rope over an abyss, a dangerous crossing, a dangerous wayfaring, a dangerous looking back, a dangerous trembling and halting. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. What is lovable in man is that he is an overgoing and a downgoing. I love those who know only how to live as downgoers, for they are the overgoers. I love the great despisers because they are the great adorers and arrows of longing for the other shore. I love those who do not first seek a reason beyond the stars for going down and being sacrifices, but sacrifice themselves to the earth so that the earth of the Übermensch may one day arrive. I love those who live in order to know and seek to know so that the Übermensch may one day live. Thus they seek their own downgoing. I love those who labor and invent so that they may build the house for the Übermensch and prepare for him the earth, animals and plants. For thus they seek their own downgoing. I love those who love their virtue, for virtue is the will to downgoing and an arrow of longing. I love those who reserve no share of spirit for themselves, but want to be wholly the spirit of their virtue. Thus they walk as spirit over the bridge. I love those who make their virtue their inclination and destiny. Thus, for the sake of their virtue, they are willing to live on or live no more. I love those who desire not too many virtues. One virtue is more of a virtue than two, because it is more of a knot for one's destiny to cling to. I love those whose souls are lavish, who want no thanks and do not take back, for they always give and desire not to keep for themselves. I love those who are ashamed when the dice fall in their favor, and who then ask, "Am I a dishonest player?" For they are willing to succumb. I love those who scatter golden words in advance of their deeds, and always do more than they promise, for they seek their own downgoing. I love those who justify the future ones and redeem the past ones, for they are willing to succumb through the present ones. I love those who chastise their God because they love their God, for they must succumb through the wrath of their God. I love those whose souls are deep even in wounding, and may succumb through a small matter. Thus they go willingly over the bridge. I love those whose souls are so overfull that they forget themselves, and all things are in them. Thus all things become their downgoing. I love those who are of a free spirit and a free heart. Thus their head is only the bowels of their heart. Their heart, however, causes their downgoing. I love all who are like heavy drops falling one by one out of the dark cloud that lowers over man. They herald the coming of the lightning and succumb as heralds. Behold, I am a herald of the lightning and a heavy drop out of the cloud. The lightning, however, is the Übermensch. When Zarathustra spoke these words, he looked at the people again and fell silent. "There they stand," he said to his heart. "There they laugh. They do not understand me. I am not the mouth for these ears. Must one first batter their ears so they may learn to hear with their eyes? Must one clatter like kettle drums and penitential preachers? Or do they only believe the stammerer? They have something of which they are proud. What do they call it, that which makes them proud? Culture, they call it. It distinguishes them from the goatherds. They dislike hearing of contempt for themselves. So I will appeal to their pride. I will speak to them of the most contemptible thing. That, however, is the last man." And thus Zarathustra spoke to the people. It is time for man to set his goal. It is time for man to plant the germ of his highest hope. The soil is still rich enough for it, but that soil will one day be poor and exhausted, and no lofty tree will be able to grow there. Alas, the time is coming when man will no longer launch the arrow of his longing beyond man, and the string of his bow will have forgotten how to sing. I tell you, one must still have chaos within oneself to give birth to a dancing star. I tell you, you still have chaos within you. Alas, the time is coming when man will no longer give birth to any star. Alas, the time of the most despicable man is coming, who can no longer despise himself. Look, I show you the last man. What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star? So asks the last man, blinking. The earth has then become small, and on it hops the last man who makes everything small. His species is as ineradicable as the ground flea. The last man lives the longest. We have discovered happiness, say the last men, and blink. They have left the regions where life is hard, for they need warmth. One still loves one's neighbor and rubs against him, for one needs warmth. Falling ill and being distrustful, they consider sinful. They walk carefully. He is a fool who still stumbles over stones or men. A little poison now and then, that makes for pleasant dreams, and much poison at last for a pleasant death. One still works, for work is a pastime, but one is careful lest the pastime should hurt. One no longer becomes poor or rich, both are too burdensome. Who still wants to rule? Who still wants to obey? Both are too burdensome. No shepherd and one herd. Everyone wants the same. Everyone is equal. Whoever has other sentiments goes voluntarily to the madhouse. Formerly all the world was insane, say the subtlest of them, and blink. They are clever and know all that has happened, so there is no end to their mockery. People still fall out, but are soon reconciled. Otherwise it spoils their stomachs. They have their little pleasures for the day and their little pleasures for the night, but they take care of their health. We have discovered happiness, say the last men, and blink. And here ended the first discourse of Zarathustra, which is also called the Prologue, for at this point the shouting and laughter of the crowd interrupted him. "Give us this last man, O Zarathustra," they called out. "Make us into these last men. Then we will make you a gift of the Übermensch." And all the people exulted and smacked their lips. Zarathustra, however, turned sad and said to himself, "They do not understand me. I am not the mouth for these ears. Too long perhaps have I lived in the mountains. Too much have I listened to the brooks and trees. Now I speak to them as I would to the goatherds. Calm is my soul, and clear, like the mountains in the morning. But they think me cold, a mocker with terrible jests. And now they look at me and laugh. And while they laugh, they hate me too. There is ice in their laughter." Then something happened that made every mouth silent and every eye fixed. In the meantime, the rope dancer had begun his performance. He had emerged from a small door and was making his way along the rope stretched between two towers, hanging above the marketplace and the people. When he was midway across, the little door opened again, and a gaudily dressed fellow like a buffoon sprang out and hurried after the first one. "Move along, Haltfoot," his terrifying voice shouted. "Move along, lazy bones, intruder, sallow face, or I'll tickle you with my heel. What are you doing here between the towers? The tower is where you belong. You should be locked up. You're blocking the way for someone better than you." And with each word, he got closer and closer to the first man. But when he was just a step behind, the terrifying thing happened that made every mouth silent and every eye fixed. He let out a yell like a demon and leaped over the other man who was in his way. The first man, seeing his rival triumph, lost both his nerve and his balance on the rope. He threw away his pole and plunged downward faster than it, like a whirl of arms and legs into the depths. The marketplace and the people were like the sea when a storm hits. They all scattered in panic, especially where the body was about to fall. Zarathustra, however, remained standing, and the body fell right beside him, badly injured and disfigured, but not yet dead. After a while, the shattered man regained consciousness and saw Zarathustra kneeling beside him. "What are you doing here?" he said at last. "I knew long ago that the devil would trip me up. Now he's dragging me to hell. Will you stop him?" "On my honor, my friend," answered Zarathustra, "there is nothing of what you speak. There is no devil and no hell. Your soul will die even sooner than your body, so fear nothing anymore." The man looked up distrustfully. "If you speak the truth," he said, "I lose nothing when I lose my life. I am not much more than an animal that has been taught to dance by blows and meager food." "Not at all," said Zarathustra. "You have made danger your calling. There is nothing contemptible in that. Now you perish by your calling. Therefore I will bury you with my own hands." When Zarathustra had said this, the dying man did not respond further. But he moved his hand, as if seeking Zarathustra's hand in gratitude. Meanwhile evening came and the marketplace shrouded itself in gloom. The people began to disperse, for even curiosity and fear grew weary. Zarathustra, however, still sat beside the dead man lost in thought, and so he forgot the time. But at last night fell, and a cold wind blew upon the lonely figure. Then Zarathustra arose and spoke to his heart. "Indeed, Zarathustra has caught a fine fish today. It is not a man he has caught, but a corpse. Human life is somber and still without meaning. A buffoon can be its fate. I want to teach men the meaning of their existence, which is the Übermensch, the lightning from the dark cloud, man. But I am still far from them, and my meaning does not speak to their meaning. To them, I am something between a fool and a corpse. Gloomy is the night, and gloomy are Zarathustra's ways. Come, you cold and stiff companion. I will carry you to the place where I shall bury you with my own hands." When Zarathustra had spoken these words to his heart, he lifted the corpse onto his shoulders and set out on his way. Yet he had not gone 100 steps when a man crept up to him and whispered in his ear, and behold, it was the buffoon from the tower. "Leave this town, O Zarathustra," he said. "Too many here hate you. The good and the just hate you and call you their enemy and despiser. The believers in orthodox beliefs hate you and see you as a danger to the crowd. It was your fortune to be laughed at. Truly, you spoke like a buffoon. It was your fortune to associate with the dead dog. By lowering yourself, you saved your life today. But depart from this town, otherwise tomorrow I shall leap over you, a living man over a dead one." And when he had said this, the buffoon vanished. Zarathustra, however, continued on through the dark streets. At the town gate, the gravediggers met him. They shone their torch on his face, and recognizing Zarathustra, they mocked him. "Zarathustra is carrying away the dead dog. What a fine thing it is that Zarathustra has become a gravedigger. Our hands are too clean for that job. Will Zarathustra steal the bite from the devil? Well then, good luck with the feast. Unless the devil is a better thief than Zarathustra, he will steal them both, he will eat them both." They laughed among themselves and put their heads together. Zarathustra did not respond, but continued on his way. After 2 hours of walking through forests and swamps, he had heard too much of the hungry howling of wolves, and he himself became hungry. So he halted at a lonely house with a light burning inside. "Hunger attacks me," said Zarathustra, "like a robber. In forests and swamps, my hunger attacks me, and late in the night. My hunger has strange moods. Often it comes to me only after a meal, and all day it failed to come. Where has it been?" And so Zarathustra knocked at the door of the house. An old man appeared, holding a light, and asked, "Who comes to disturb my bad sleep?" "A living man and a dead one," said Zarathustra. "Give me something to eat and drink, for I forgot to do so during the day. He who feeds the hungry refreshes his own soul, says wisdom." The old man withdrew, but soon returned, offering Zarathustra bread and wine. "This is a bad country for the hungry," he said. "That's why I live here. Animals and men come to me, the anchorite. But have your companion eat and drink as well, for he is wearier than you." Zarathustra replied, "My companion is dead. I shall hardly be able to persuade him to eat." "That does not concern me," said the old man sullenly. "He who knocks at my door must take what I offer. Eat and fare ye well." Zarathustra then continued on his journey for another 2 hours, relying on the path and the light of the stars, for he was an experienced night walker and liked to gaze into the faces of all that slept. When the morning dawned, however, Zarathustra found himself in a dense forest, with no path visible. He then placed the dead man in a hollow tree for protection from the wolves and lay down on the ground and moss. He fell asleep immediately, tired in body, but with a tranquil soul. Zarathustra slept long. Not only did the rosy dawn pass over his head, but also the morning. At last his eyes opened, and amazedly he gazed into the forest and the stillness, and amazedly he gazed into himself. Then he quickly arose like a seafarer who suddenly sees land, and he shouted for joy, for he saw a new truth. And he spoke thus to his heart. "A light has dawned upon me. I need companions, living ones, not dead companions and corpses which I carry with me where I will. I need living companions who will follow me because they want to follow themselves and to the place where I will. A light has dawned upon me. Zarathustra is not to speak to the people, but to companions. Zarathustra shall not be the herd's herdsman and hound. To draw many away from the herd, that is why I have come. The people and the herd must be angry with me. A robber shall Zarathustra be called by the herdsman. Herdsmen, I say, but they call themselves the good and just. Herdsmen, I say, but they call themselves believers in the orthodox belief. Behold the good and just. Whom do they hate most? The one who breaks up their tables of values, the breaker, the lawbreaker. But he is the creator. Behold the believers of all beliefs, Whom do they hate most? The one who breaks up their tables of values, the breaker, the lawbreaker. But he is the creator. The creator seeks companions, not corpses, and not herds or believers either. Fellow creators the creator seeks, those who engrave new values on new tables. The creator seeks companions and fellow reapers, for everything is ripe for harvest with him. But he lacks 100 sickles, so he plucks the ears of corn and is vexed. The creator seeks companions and those who know how to sharpen their sickles. Destroyers they will be called, and despisers of good and evil. But they are the reapers and rejoicers. Fellow creators Zarathustra seeks, fellow reapers and fellow rejoicers Zarathustra seeks. What has he to do with herds, herdsmen and corpses? And you, my first companion, rest in peace. I have buried you well in your hollow tree. I have hidden you well from the wolves. But I part from you now. The time has come. Between one rosy dawn and another, a new truth has come to me. I am not to be a herdsman. I am not to be a grave digger. I will no longer speak to the people. I have spoken to the dead for the last time. With the creators, the reapers, and the rejoicers will I now associate. I will show them the rainbow and all the stairs to the Übermensch. To the lone dwellers will I sing my song, and to those who dwell in pairs, and to the one who still has ears for the unheard, I will make the heart heavy with my happiness. I make for my goal, I follow my path. Over the loiterers and tardy will I leap, thus let my onward path be their downfall. Zarathustra had spoken these words to his heart when the sun stood at its zenith. Then he looked up inquiringly, for he heard the sharp cry of a bird above him. And behold, an eagle soared through the sky in wide circles, and on it clung a serpent, not as prey, but as a friend, for it kept itself coiled around the eagle's neck. "They are my animals," said Zarathustra, rejoicing in his heart. "The proudest animal under the sun, and the wisest animal under the sun. They have come to reconnoiter. They want to know if Zarathustra still lives. Truly do I still live. I have found it more dangerous among men than among animals. Zarathustra walks dangerous paths. Let my animals lead me." When Zarathustra had said this, he remembered the words of the saint in the forest. Then he sighed and spoke to his heart. "Would that I were wiser. Would that I were wise from the very heart, like my serpent. But I ask the impossible. Therefore, I ask that my pride always accompany my wisdom. And if my wisdom should ever forsake me, alas, it loves to fly away. May my pride then fly with my folly." Thus began Zarathustra's downgoing.